Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for rejoining us here today. Senator Robert Menendez will speak. The Senator's office has been in touch with this operation since the incident occurred. I'm very pleased he's had an opportunity today to visit the site, to visit with the captain directly, to get an overview of how operations have gone, how we started, and how we got to where we are today. This Senator has been hands-on. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Assemblyman. Thank you for your leadership and your work. I appreciate Captain Moore being here with us of the Coast Guard and her community liaison. Let me first say, last time I was here in Paulsboro was under much happier circumstances. We were signing a major Tiger grant for the Department of Transportation, and it was good news for Paulsboro. We come back today with a more challenging time, but nonetheless one that I believe we will succeed at making sure that at the end of the day residents are safe, the area is clean, and we have removed the disaster. I come here today primarily out of concern for the people of Paulsboro. This is a community that I've come to know over the years, from the time that the Assemblyman was the mayor, as one that is made up of residents who work incredibly hard at their jobs. They devote themselves to their families, and they've opened their town to welcome industries that contributed to the prosperity of our state and the region. So the train derailment that occurred days ago disrupted this community to the point that, as I understand it, a couple hundred families,
about
200 and some odd families have been told up to date that it's not safe to remain in their homes, and it's good to hear, and I'll let the captain get to the specifics of that these families have been called today and told that they can begin with Coast Guard assistance to come back to their homes, to be able to go through a air monitoring process, and then hopefully, if that air monitoring turns out positively, to be able to stay and be back in their homes. And that's a good news item. And while it's a comfort to know that those families have been kept out of immediate danger posed by a toxic chemical, we're left with a lot of questions about the circumstances that led to this incident. So I appreciate the captain's overall oversight of what you told me has happened. I've listened to the information by the National Transportation Safety Board. Of course, they'll take some time to come to an ultimate conclusion. And I know those investigations are continuing. I know that public officials have been here throughout the week seeking answers to many of the questions I have. But even now, without knowing the ultimate conclusion, there are lessons, I think, to be learned from this derailment at a tiny, nearly 140-year-old bridge nestled in this hardworking middle-class community. And one very clear lesson that I take from this incident is we have to rethink how rail inspections take place, and whether those private companies who are allowed to do the inspection themselves, whether that really is in both community interest and the national interest at the end of the day. It's also about that we forsake transportation infrastructure at our own peril. A bridge built 4 years after the nation's first transcontinental railroad opened. Think about that. 4 years after the nation's first transcontinental railroad opened cannot be expected, I would think, to serve the demands of the 21st century global economy, or the stress that that new 21st century global economy brings in terms of heightened weights and heightened realities of the stress brought into this rail line. I've strongly advocated for and secured significant federal investments in the upgrade and maintenance of our public transportation systems in New Jersey. These are investments in our prosperity. They're also investments in our safety. The same needs to be said about the ability to upgrade and maintain infrastructure that is privately owned. And I submit that the public interest is deeply intertwined with transportation matters, regardless of who owns the bridge or the tracks. As I said earlier, the last time I was in Paulsboro was only about a month ago, I guess it was. We talked about we had a signing of an $18.5 million federal grant for improvements to track and connections linking Paulsboro to nearby ports, critically important for its economic development. But the bridge over Mantua Creek is a private line that connects to that line that we're talking about. And trains that cannot pass through private rails will not be able to make it to public rails. So everything is connected. Therefore, a private line that fails will threaten to make publicly improved railways useless. That's not something we can tolerate. Since my last visit to Paulsboro, we've had a series of disasters here in New Jersey. I haven't seen, as someone who's lived in this state my whole life, haven't seen the series of events we've had, unfortunate events. There's a commonly known prayer that asks God to give us the wisdom to know the difference between circumstances that we can control and circumstances we cannot. Super Sandy was an incident that was far beyond anyone's control. But I believe that this derailment has a lot more to do with things that are within our control. Tolerance of the status quo is not acceptable. There are people in nearby homes. I just saw, is it the battalion chief?
Assistant Fire Chief.
The assistant fire chief, whose home is right by the derailment, and unfortunately got some bad news about his structure today. And yet he's out there taking care of his fellow residents in Paulsboro. That's what assistant fire chiefs do. It's the type of people we admire in their service. We have to help him and everybody else in Paulsboro be held whole. And more importantly, we have to make sure that once we know the final aspects of this, the incident report and determination by the National Transportation Safety Board, that we act upon it. But there's some things to me that I don't think I have to wait for the National Transportation Safety Board. We need to improve our infrastructure. We need to make the private sector, in which this particular case is their infrastructure, improve their infrastructure. And safety comes first. When we fail at that, we ultimately leave the public at risk. That's not something we can tolerate. With that, let me ask Captain Moore to give her latest update, introduce her community liaison, and then we'll take questions.
Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon. I would like to bring you a brief update on where we are in terms of our operations. We continue to have our air monitoring in place, continuous, both stationary and roving in the community and at the work site. And to date, we continue to have no detectable readings of vinyl chloride in the community or at the work site. That's tremendously good news. In terms of our focused operations on the site, today's operations are focused on unloading and re-railing the two cargoes that are not hazardous tank cars. That is a lumber car and a plastic pellet car. So the people in the community are going to hear heavy equipment, and hopefully we're going to have that engines come in and take away those rail cars sometime this evening, potentially even overnight. We are also going to anchor the chemical tank cars so that we can move around them much safer. There will continue to be water and sediment sampling. We also have two 80,000 cubic feet per minute fans that are being deployed to the site. Understand that in the past you've heard me talk a lot about flammable vapors. We have actually a 3,000 gallon hydraulic oil tank that's associated with the bridge structure. We don't know what condition that tank is in, and if anything were to happen, we have welding and cutting operations associated with rigging for the barge. We don't want anything to happen, so we're going to be ventilating and constantly measuring for any flammable vapors. We also have, obviously, the fire support, that monster Neptune system that many of you have seen deployed at the site. We're going to do water cutting and burning operations to remove those dolphins or those kind of pillar structures that are in front of that fender and walkway structure that's on the Delaware River side of the bridge. We don't have any dive or sonar ops scheduled for today. We've completed our sonar evaluations yesterday with no obstructions and basically no surprises or concerns noted on either side of the bridge. And we have our reentry plan underway. Hopefully you have the details, but basically in broad terms, we've divided the community that has been evacuated up into 4 zones. Working from the outside, the most recently evacuated people in, We are contacting residents. We are having them come to the Paulsboro Fire Department. They come into our assistance center. They are explained the process for returning to their homes. One of the members of the family's household is brought to their home with security and air monitoring technician. The home is entered and make sure that everything is in one place. It's measured for the presence, as we discussed before, of volatile organic compounds. If any volatile organic compounds is detected, then another measure specific for vinyl chloride is taken. If any detectable level of vinyl chloride is detected, the home is then ventilated with a commercial ventilation system for about 2 hours. Then the process continues. We come back and measure again until the home is clean of any detectable limit of vinyl chloride. If on first inspection no volatile organic compounds are measured, then the homeowner is allowed to return to their home, and they'll get paperwork associated with that. And we'll have a record of the status of every home as we work through that. One of the things that we've also done today, I'm very happy to say, is the Unified Command has agreed to appoint Cindy Randazzo is our Deputy Incident Commander for Community Relations. The full resources of our incident are going to be available to her to be able to answer the needs of the community. And remember, we have very many people, different kinds of people that have been affected by this disaster. We have those people that we evacuated first. We have those people affected by that second part of that evacuation. We have the people adjacent to those evacuated areas that have a certain set of concerns. We have the remaining residents of Paulsboro whose lives have been disrupted. We have business owners in Paulsboro that don't live in Paulsboro. And of course, we have people coming and going, kids at school, a tremendously complicated job, and I'm delighted to have Ms. Randazzo do it for us and with us. She's a tremendous add to the team, and I'm just delighted to have her with us.
Captain, is it fair to say that you've had 0 readings for 72 hours?
I'm not sure about the numbers because understand I don't have the number of hours, but for several days now we've had 0 readings of vinyl chloride at the site or in the community. All right, thank you very much.
What about the cars that are still there, the ones that still have the vinyl chloride in it, the one that has been cleaned? What is going to be happening with them?
Okay, so as I described, today's operations, yesterday's operations, and the completion of this site preparation, that's all considered phase 2. Phase 3 is more crane operations and dive operations. What will happen is over a series of very scripted and coordinated events, each individual tank car will be rigged by professional railroad wreck riggers. It will be lifted by the crane and landed on the other side of the bridge on a barge. Each tank will be dealt with completely separately. That is why some of the operations today have to do with anchoring the tank cars, the chemical tank cars, and we will be doing further work essentially around the wreck site to make sure that when we lift one tank car, everything else in the site stays stable. That is, it's a very sequenced, scripted operation. So,
How long do you think that would take?
we're still actually looking to see how long, what the sequencing is in terms of the rigging, the diving. We have dive operations that were confined to slack tides. We are actually very fortunate to get into a period now, as of kind of today, yesterday, but well into next week, where we have the benefit of 2 slack tides during daylight hours. Last week, we had only 1 slack tide during a daylight, or this past week, we only had 1 slack tide during daylight hours. So just to be aware, diving operations on this kind of an operation are incredibly risky, and no other operations are allowed to commence when divers are in the water. So the plan specific to this, a day-by-day, heavily scripted, heavily detailed plan in terms of a series of lifts and picks is being scripted right now. I don't have the full number of days that this is going to take, diving on the site, identifying where trucks may be in the way, where some of the wheels may be in the way, other structures. We have to further document that site underwater to understand exactly what those lifts and picks are going to be.
The reason why I'm pursuing this with you, Captain, is because we talked to a couple of people at the firehouse, and they are questioning whether they want to go back to their homes because those cars are still in the water.
Yes.
Can you provide them with any assurances that as this process goes on over the next, I guess, several days, that, you know, everything's as safe as you can make it, and if not, maybe out again?
So what we've begun to put together is the plan. As we've put together this plan, understand that we have remedial measures on site as we are beginning to do these lifts and picks. It's a much more controlled evolution than the train wreck on Friday a week ago. What we have on site in terms of the Neptune system and the ability to suppress vapors locally, what we have on site in terms of the amount of rigging and control of where all of the pieces are, the fact that the cars are constructed, they're actually designed to be lifted, they're constructed to be lifted, the lift points are already on there, we don't have to weld anything on the tank car itself. It's designed to be lifted with the cargo in it. And the people that we have working this have tremendous amount of REX experience. We've got at least one person that has had over 400 derailments in terms of the salvage associated with removing the cars, experience with over 400 derailments, many of which had many more cars. So we have an incredible amount of dedicated and talented expertise, just fantastic team that is creative, dedicated, they work safe, they're working together. The risk is extremely low. We have much more control of our environment in this evolution than actually we had even when we were moving product. We're in a tremendously better situation. The fact that we're not as worried about levels of flammable vapors is a tremendous level of safety for us.
So does all that mean that so you would, in essence, not let families back in their home if you thought that the rest of your operation would risk them?
That's correct. We've had extensive discussions with respect to the balance of do we evacuate all of Paulsboro, or do we put the shelter in place, instruction in place for these, as if we were to have a problem. Sir, the way the tank cars work is, if we have a breach in a tank car, in other words, a repeat, say, of Friday, where you have a breach in a tank car, the affected area is a half a mile in diameter. That half a mile in diameter of a vapor then moves wherever the wind carries it. It moves in terms of in speed. We have tools that tell us how fast that vapor cloud moves based on the number of miles per hour of wind we have in what direction. That shelter-in-place order gives us the flexibility to say, along with our suppression methods at the scene, that shelter-in-place instruction gives us the ability to say to the Paulsboro residents, stay inside, and then we allow the vapor cloud to move through, basically, and move along and disperse as it did on Friday, and then we lift the shelter-in-place. I don't expect that's going to happen, but that's actually the most appropriate tool for the residents of Paulsboro.
Captain, have you had any other either additional now or late reported from earlier reports of sicknesses, illnesses? I know we didn't have any a couple of days ago.
We have
had upset stomachs, but it was a virus.
Right.
So,
We've had no injuries at the site and no reports from the community that I'm aware of illnesses that I'm aware of. I also want to let everybody know that we heard a lot of had a lot of information come to us on Wednesday evening, and so we have put up an incident-specific website for the community. We're going to post frequently asked questions, scheduling, a lot of information on the site. It's www.paulsbororesponse.com. I invite everybody to look at that site and you start to see it populated with a lot of information with respect to the reentry plan, a lot of information with respect to frequently asked questions. Just to give you a quick example, one of the questions that came in on Wednesday night is somebody said, well, what if a bird had flown through and did any wildlife die? The people that are expert with the chemical advised us and said it really wasn't a wildlife concern if they had been exposed. It's kind of an anesthetizing chemical that they would have probably dropped very, very local to the scene, but we went ahead and spoke with animal control, and they didn't see animals that day or the subsequent day in terms of dead animals in the neighborhood. So, I mean, we're asking those questions as people bring them to us, and we hadn't really considered that level of concern. So we're asking those questions and getting those answers. We're going to be populating that website with those answers.
Captain,
If I can ask it, I'm sorry, excuse me.
once a family moves back into their home, is there any need to retest the air quality at a later time?
No, without any readings in the community from our stationary or roving monitors, then we're very confident that the air coming in and out of their homes, as long as we identify the home area inside the home is no detectable vinyl chloride, then it's not going to come back.
And you're going to continue that monitoring throughout until the end of your operation?
Absolutely. That monitoring is going to be continuous as long as we're on site moving these hazardous material cars. Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions?
Senator, any ballpark, because we're just getting into this with Superstorm Sandy now, but any ballpark idea of costs of this and how
This particular incident?
Yeah, and how those costs will be borne or
I have not, maybe the Assemblyman, I don't know if you have had any, I have not any specific information to make that determination. I do know this, that the $100,000 that they saved in taking the person and automating it, they've blown that $100,000.
And Walter, well, let's just say.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just say related to that, that tab is running and being calculated, and it'll be understood. There are a couple of different levels that these expenses associated with this have to be weighed. There's been the local municipal cost, state cost, and then, of course, Conrail's own cost. Eventually, a number will be tabulated. This has been not an inexpensive event.
Is there any desire, John, once all is said and done, is the state and I guess the feds going to seek that Conrail pay this bill, whatever it happens to be?
Our understanding, if I may, to start, first of all, Conrail, as I have said previously, Conrail's response, I think, has been very solid. I've been very pleased with how they've handled our residents, how they've conducted themselves, and frankly, if the railroad operations side of that equation had run half as well as their response side has run, we likely wouldn't be in this mess. So we're going to get through this. The captain's done an outstanding job, the coordination today, getting people back in, finally getting all this ability to get this information out there in a coordinated way is going to be a great help, because there's a lot of good that has occurred here under these circumstances. And there's going to be a number of lessons learned here, so we're going to do better. And so we don't want this to happen here again, but somewhere else, something similar will happen, so these lessons learned here will be valuable to everyone else.
But just so we're clear, you're confident that, or are you confident that Conrail, once the bill is put together, will step up and pay?
I have a federal senator standing next to me, and I have a state president who is my partner's legislative district. I would say to you that Conrail will pay.
I would just assume, I don't want to speak for Conrail, but I would assume that just like BP learned its lesson in the Gulf, I'm sure Conrail has learned its lesson here, and we'll do the right thing. And if not, we'll make sure they do the right thing.
Thank you.
All right? Thank you all.
Thanks, Senator.
Captain, thank you.